Call to order the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of Thursday, June the 10th, 2021, and acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is within the territories of the Sechelt and Squamish Nation. I'll tell you folks, I'm starting to feel the way that I did on home renovations. You know, you start out with lots of good ideas and enthusiasm and a budget that you really work hard on. By the time you're midway, everything is taking longer than you expected, and it's costing a whole lot more, and you are having to modify your expectations about the outcome. And the trick is to get out of the whole thing alive without damaging critical relationships beyond repair. So I think that's probably where we are in our term in office. We have an agenda in front of us, the infrastructure agenda, an amended agenda. Are there any changes, deletions, additions? We don't. Do I see a motion to approve the agenda? Amended agenda. Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Great. We have an agenda. And my favorite topic is up first, the water supply update.
Good morning, committee. It's my pleasure again to provide you with an update on our water supply situation, and I will start at the start, which is better than at the end. So where are we at the moment? It's June 10th, which usually means that snow is melting, and that's indeed the case. This is a graph with data from the Tatrahydron weather station, which is at about 1,423 meters elevation. So it's well above, it's on a slope of Mount Steele, it's well above the lake. And the orange line is the data from 2 years ago, the green line from 3 years ago, and the blue line from last year. And you can see that the line for this year, the trend line, is heading towards that. At that elevation of 1,400 meters, the snow is gone early July. We're going at a little bit faster pace than we did in 2018 and 2020, but slower than we did 2 years ago when we had a really dry spring and warm spring. So at the lake itself, at Chapman Lake, all the snow is currently gone. What's the weather forecast? This is the weather forecast as of May 31st for the upcoming 3 months. And I put the green arrow. That's where the Sunshine Coast about is located. And as you can see, it's turning into the orange sea areas, which means that it is that there is a chance that it could turn into above normal. If you look at the 1 month forecast, it's about normal. So long range forecast, normal to slightly above normal temperatures. Doesn't mean anything in terms of precipitation, which is of course the prime area of where we're interested in. However, temperature is a big factor in the actual water use by the community, and that's I will talk about it later. So in terms of drought response, Eastbourne is currently since May 21st in stage 2. The wells were dropping, and the rain over the last week actually stabilized it a little bit, which is beneficial. Otherwise, additional measures in going to stage 3 might have been required there. For the Chapman system, I expect that stage 2, the number stage 2 is gone from the slide. Stage 2 will be expected late June. So I think at that time, there is no water anymore flowing over the top of the weir at Chapman Lake, and we call stage 2. So that will be just a bit earlier than 2018 and 2020, but about a month, 3 weeks, 2 months later than we did in 2019. And that's reflective of that snow melt graph I just showed you at Mount Steele. In terms of the temperature and the correlation between temperature and water use, this is the graph since January 1st from this year. And you can really see that from, let's say, mid-April, there's a strong correlation between temperature, the solid blue line, and water use by the community in the Chapman, the total water use by the community for the Chapman system, which are the bars. And I removed from this slide the precipitation, but that's not having a big impact at the moment on consumption. It's primarily temperature that's driving the water use. What are we doing to reduce the water use? Earlier this week, we sent about 400 leak notification letters to properties with leaks. And of course, we have our monthly water use update program, and we currently have about 200 subscriptions to that. So if residents are interested to receive their monthly water use in an email and how it was compared to last year and the average in the community, they can send an email to infrastructure@scrd.ca and they will receive their water use data from now onwards. In terms of outreach and enforcement, as of this week, we're starting our patrols. We'll continue to do that throughout the summer. We'll do about 2 or 3 days a week. We'll be out in the community in different times of the day, different days of the week. All complaints we receive from the community itself will also be investigated, and all complaints will be followed up on, and we'll issue warnings and provide information about water conservation regulation. That's our first step, and if not successful, if there is continued non-compliance, and fine and an enforcement notice will be issued, and fines are presented here in the slide as well. That's it. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, GM Rosenboom. Do we have any questions from the assembled? Aha, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Always good to see kind of what shape we're in. It was the complaints piece I was wondering about. So reports and complaints are how does staff receive those? Like phone call, is there any preferred method that they're receiving? Like I don't think there's a water form to fill in. So it's emails, telephone calls
It's emails, telephone calls, and sometimes people coming to the desk, to the front counter. And we respond anyway. We'll get back to them, and we investigate the complaint itself.
So info@SCRD. If you have a water issue,
infrastructure. The best one is infrastructure@scrd.ca. That's the best method to use, and then just provide. But sometimes people don't want to put something in writing. Because it might be related to a neighbor or whatever, and they can always call just the SRD generating phone number, and they will be redirected to the appropriate staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Director Kopp.
Thank you. So 400 leak notifications have gone out in the last month. I'm just wondering if you know offhand how many leaks may have been fixed in the last month.
Ooh. No, the last notifications were sent in, leak notifications were sent in March. So I will make sure that I include that data in next month's update.
Great. Thank you very much. Last chance, folks. Going, gone. All right. I would like to see a motion to receive all reports and communications. Moved, seconded, all in favor. Thank you, that passes. Let us move on to item number 3, the church Road Well Field Project update.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. Since the fall of 2019, staff have been working with the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development on a water license for the Church Road Wellfield project. This report provided status update on that process. While the SRD and the Ministry have made significant progress in their discussions on the terms and conditions for water license for the Church Road Wellfield, there are two main outstanding items to be worked through. First of all, there are ongoing discussions with the Squamish First Nation about the impacts of the project on the environment and their archaeological interest in the area. Another area we're discussing with them is their future engagement in the project. The other item of discussion is with the town of Gibsons, and that's about the functioning of the aquifer in general to ensure that the Church Road Wellfield would not impact the use by the town of the aquifer to provide its water to its residents. Staff are still aiming to have the Church Road Wellfield online in summer of 2022, but it will depend on the timing of the completion of the two mentioned discussions if the timeline will be met. Staff are more than happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Committee, do we have questions? Director Beamish.
It's not a question, it's more of a comment. We are having, I think as Remco knows and the RD knows, that Waterline, who's our contractor for our water investigation services, is going to be doing an update on our 2015 report on the aquifer this summer. So looking forward to the results of that as well. He's also looking at, we're also looking at the impact of any tree cutting would have in that aquifer area. We will be speaking of that as well as speaking, be one of our UBCM issues to bring up with ministers. So, and I think it's an issue that we have in common, and obviously, so we'll be looking at that. So, and just thank Remco for the update.
Thank you. Director Ties.
I just want to ask if there's anything we as a board can do to help. I'm thinking especially with trying to reach out to the Squamish First Nation. Should we drive over there, knock on doors, say hello, try to contact some of the elected officials there? What can we do to make sure that this is going ahead by the end of August?
Thank you very much for that question. Any relationship with another party, like we have good relationship with the town of Gibsons, is helping in these kind of circumstances. And given the importance of our relationship with the Squamish Nation for this project and future projects, it's I highly respect our collaboration and our discussions with them. So any conversations that can be held at the elected level to relay the importance of the timeline of this project for the Sunshine Coast community would be beneficial.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. The topic of how the aquifer behaves. So I guess this might be a town of Gibsons questions or a staff question, because we've got wells that are owned by the town of Gibsons, the SCRD, the province has monitoring wells, and private wells. And so they all provide data for understanding how the aquifer responds to human or the pumping. So does anyone actually circle all of those things into one place to monitor the aquifer? Is this within anyone's jurisdiction? Like, I'm wondering, is the town, because the 2015 report, the boundaries have been adjusted now. So will the town of Gibsons report broaden the scope of the influence of the aquifer behavior, or is it going to be limited to the town boundaries? So I'm not. There seems to be a sea of data out there, but it's in these different silos. And is anyone bringing it together to understand how it's working?
What I can say is that the discussions we're having currently with the ministry and the town staff are such that we're really looking on how can we integrate the knowledge we currently have, as well as how can we combine our resources to identify any or to address any outstanding information gaps we're having. Because it's the same aquifer, it's now considered to be the same aquifer underneath the Soames, as well as underneath parts of Elphinstone, where the SRD drilled the test well from Marianne West. It's the same aquifer. So the questions that we're having is not only related to the water license itself, but it's also to the functioning of the aquifer in total. So there are there's a clear intent from the three parties to work on the collaborative approach in terms of monitoring and data assessment to make sure that we collectively make best use of the resources we have available to better understand the aquifer.
Thank you. I see Director Beamish's hand is up. Are you on that topic?
Yes, one of the things that the town has done, and we have several monitoring wells established, including up at the gravel pits up there. So it may well be that one thing the SCRD will want to look at are additional monitoring wells put in terms of the area of how that Church Road's affected. So that could be another strategy to look at, is adding to that network of monitoring wells.
Yeah, and that's part of the plan moving forward as well, as to include more wells. So yeah, that aligns.
Good, thank you. Director Lee.
Sorry, I was talking to myself. I was just saying I'm on to a different topic, so, but I'll go ahead anyways. It's probably easy to answer. I noticed that our interim strategy is to use Chapman during the winter months. I'm assuming that would be to allow the aquifer to recharge. It seems like a good strategy, and I suspect Chapman has enough water for everybody in the winter. That's only the wells. We need the wells in the summer. So that seems like an awful good strategy. But my question was, how long before the water that we actually build up in the aquifer by using Chapman, how long does that take before it gets down to a well? Is it years or months or do you know that?
It will totally depend on where the water is falling, but in earlier reports, and I can reproduce them, there's a zone. It will take about 10 to 20 years from the water to get from the slopes of Mount Elphinstone to Soames. To 10 to 20 years. Somewhere it depends on where you are, etc. And the primary rationale for continuing to rely on Chapman water system in the winter is because it's way cheaper. It's gravity fed.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Shortly after we got elected, the Squamish Nation, at that point, they indicated, now, is my or just on my end?
You are breaking up. You're coming in
Okay.
little spurt.
Okay, here, switch cameras. Okay, so shortly after we got elected, like I said, we met with the Squamish Nation, and they indicated at that time that one of their issues was capacity. And that, I mean, if you think about it, we know from the Sechelt Nation here, they deal with the federal government, they deal with the provincial government, and they deal with us because they're a government in their own right. So there was conversation then about requiring additional funds for capacity to be able to deal with all the stuff coming at them. Is that a conversation that is happening inside of this conversation with the Squamish and the province at this point.
Thanks for raising that question. Yes, that's indeed the case. When I was talking about areas of discussion in future engagement in a project, that included capacity funding and alternative ways for them to also benefit financially from a project within their territory, and which would then allow them to provide additional capacity to actually participate in the project. And I know that our CEO is working with other CFOs and CFO on the topic of capacity funding in general.
Okay, so that may be something that we as a board may need to advocate for in September when we go to UBCM. So that may be something to be added to the list. And then we would require staff to give us some input as to how we'd want to address it, who we'd want to address it to. Thank you.
In fact, I was thinking, I believe that we have an upcoming meeting with our MLA, and we could put that to the top of the list for that meeting. CAO McKinley can do that for us, I'm sure. I have a question, which is, when will we know? When will we know whether we're going to get the well field online for next year?
Our construction timeline is currently from issuance of the tender, which can happen immediately after us receiving a water license, because on the technical side, unless there are other items coming from these ongoing discussions, our tender package is about ready to be issued. So once we have the water license in hand, we can issue the tender, and then it will take up to a year to complete the project. And they will include the entire tendering phase as well as the construction. There might be some opportunities to shorten the construction window, but it totally depends on delivery times and availability of contractors, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why the critical time, of course, for to use the water is late summer. So that's the window we currently have this summer to make sure that we get the water license, so that by the end of next summer, we have the Church Road well field. We can put it online.
Thank you. And I had one further question. I think I asked this before, but I'll ask it again. Are we working with Modi to see what we can do with stormwater in that area?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the response to your question is yes, we've had numerous meetings with the area rep for Modi to discuss exactly that, drainage ditch on the north side of the road. And they have verbally committed to assisting and to doing that as part of the construction project and coordinating with the SCRD at that point in time. And in fact, we have a meeting this afternoon to talk about just that very thing as well again.
Maybe to clarify, to avoid any confusion, Manager Mizarek is talking about Elphinstone Road, and maybe you were talking about Reed Road. So
correct, yes, it was Elphinstone. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we're talking about Elphinstone. That's where, because there are drainage issues there and water flowing over the road. Those we hope to working with MOTI to get them addressed, and we don't have the commitment yet from MOTI to do anything on Reed Road. The water line on Reed Road, the water main, will be on the south side of the road. And as far as I understand, the main water drainage issues are on the north side, so we're not touching those.
I do understand that, but it seems kind of silly that we're going to have crews and equipment and everybody out there, and they can't walk across the road and do some work on the other side. You know, it's a little trying. So thank you very much. I'm seeing no further questions at this moment. So I think we can move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the SCRD Curbside Recycling Additional Information Report.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair. As an introduction to this report, staff prepared several slides. So I'm going to share my screen to for that again. Okay, come on, you can do it. Yes. So, what is actually the decision at hand? I think the decision is, does the SRD want to implement the curbside recycling collection service in addition to the current recycling depot services? If yes, then the sub-questions are, if it's in area B, D, E, and F, and then we can proceed within the current service area for refuse collection. If not, then an electoral approval process would be required for us to establish a new service area for the participating electoral areas. Decisions for that can be made at a future date are the details on the collection method, if it's a single bin or single two streams, or and the procurement of a provider and implementation timelines. If it's a no, then a curbside collection service for recycling could be reassessed when the results of the pending waste composition study are completed, and it can be included then as part of the solid waste management plan update. Both projects are currently a part of this year's budget, and timing is to be confirmed in part based on discussions today. So what do we know so far? Recycle BC, they determined which type of materials can be collected. We received some funds from the SRD, and from Recycle BC, they to support the collection, but Recycle BC fund everything related to the hauling and the processing of the collected materials, and it's residential services only. So no commercial, just like with the depots, no commercial entity can use any Recycle BC services. If the SRD were to fund collection services, the estimated cost, depending on the model and the amount of areas, will be between $40 and $65 per property annually, and there is a one-time cost associated with the purchase of bins. We will receive less because we already have a depot model, and if we also add a curbside collection service to it, Recycle BC is reducing our incentives that we're receiving for the depots. To offset that decrease, there is an increase needed for taxation for solid waste services in your order of magnitude between $30,000 and $50,000. And this is a service that's funded through from all electoral areas and Town of Gibson and the Seashield. The SRD curbside collection service could start as early as Q3 2022, but depending on the participating electoral areas, it could also be a year later if an electoral approval process would be required. There will be most likely financial impact to the depots, primarily the Town of Gibson, the Gibson Recycling Depot, and given the timing of the renewal of the contract with that depot, those could be considered at that time. But most likely it will result in additional costs to the SRD to run the depot. And just note that this Seashield and Seashield Indian Government District already have a curbside collection program in place. Early this year, we completed a questionnaire and asked the community what their interests were, and the vast majority of the respondents, about 72%, received that they were interested and willing to pay the cost, and 28% were not interested in receiving the service. Some pros and cons. This table is also included in the report. It will help to reduce the recyclables that are currently being disposed of at the landfill, to reduce that amount. And yeah, I think you can see the rest of the pros and cons. And staff are more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's see who's weighing in first. Director Beamish.
I guess that my primary concern at this point is the town of Gibsons is not at this point discussing curbside recycling. And therefore any additional costs to the depot will have to be borne by the rural areas and not by the town if we're not a participant in the curbside recycling. So you need to factor that cost in as the town not being a contributor to the increased costs and going forward. Because that would be a result, and I'd be very interested to know what those potential increased costs are, and maybe at some point have a presentation from the depot operator saying how would this impact them, so we can understand that clearly.
Right. Staff, is there any way to assign the indirect costs of the service to the rural areas rather than the general solid waste service, or can we not do that?
I think Manager Cooper, take it away.
Thanks, Jim Rosenberg. Likely going to say the same thing. The way the service is established under the establishing bylaw for regional solid waste, all of the programs or services are funded for all of our residents. So all of the electoral areas, the local governments, our island residents. So I'm not sure what would be required. That may involve, the establishment of an entire new service. So that you would only be charging those residences within a specific boundary. So right now that boundary is the entire SCRD.
Right. Director Tice.
Yeah, I think I read in the report that the current curbside recycling pickup in Seashelt gets dropped off at the Gibsons Recycling Center. Is that correct? And in that case, if we do the same thing with our future pickup service, would the depot not be subject to price increases because they're still receiving all that stuff then, or at least they're receiving it through a different stream, or would there still be an increase in pricing?
Yeah.
Great question. We wouldn't know the full results or the impacts unless the service was initiated. That said, it's Recycle BC that sets the post-collection service provider. So they would decide where the SCRD materials would go. There's a separate contract and obviously separate pricing that's provided or paid to that service provider. So how the Gibsons Recycling Depot, for instance, would parcel off the various services that they provide for the District of Sechelt, the SCRD for depots, and a potential for the SCRD for curbside, that would be within their business model to determine the staffing requirements and how all of that may affect their ability to provide all of those services, and then the costs to provide all of those services.
Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. From an Area F perspective, I guess the way I'm looking at it is curbside a solution to a problem that we have? And I'm not really convinced that that curbside is a solution for a problem that we have. So it feels like we have a solution for a problem we're trying to find. Because for me, we have an existing service, which is, I hear nothing but good things about the Gibsons Recycling Center. It's such a heavily and well supported service. It's dearly loved almost. It's really truly amazing. So Anything that would jeopardize that would really fit in with the area F, and area F people are trip chaining anyways. When they're going to do the recycling, they combine their trips, shopping visits in the shopping, medical appointments, whatever they're doing, recreation center visits. So at this point, I'm having a hard time looking at the supporting of the curbside.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing in your presentation and what I read in the report is we will increase taxes to all of the sunshine to increase or put in place the curbside recycling, and also increase taxes because of the cost for the depots that we have. It almost seems like we are at a place where we need to do a complete service review of Function 350, because Town of Gibson's, does what they do there with organics and garbage, etc. District of Sechelt, we have our own programs, and yet we are all contributing to the one at the regional district, and it just keeps getting more and more and more expensive. So it might be an opportunity to take a step back and look at what should we be providing and how should we be providing that. Maybe Town of Gibson's and District of Sechelt should not be on our own with doing our own programs, because we also contribute regionally. Maybe it's time we step back and look at, do we want one function that does all the services for the whole Sunshine Coast? Would that be more financially viable for everybody? I don't know. I don't know if we have enough information to do that, but that's what a service review would actually do. So maybe as a board, we need to give that some consideration.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Yeah, I'm interested that if the curbside recycling is from Sechelt is going to the Gibson's depot, how is it being processed at the Gibson's depot? I'm not aware that there's kind of a sorting line there that goes through it all. Where does it go from there? And I have not seen, granted, I haven't wandered around the site very much, but how is that processed and where does it end up?
Yeah, Robin.
Thanks for the question. So Gibson's Recycling Depot, several years ago when the District of Sechelt was joining the Recycle BC program, built a bunker. So when the truck shows up at the Gibson's Recycling Depot, they dump all the materials onto the ground. The Gibson's Recycling Depot has staff and equipment where it is then loaded into various containers. There may be some additional baling or whatnot. I'm not entirely certain of that. And then the materials are delivered to a facility in the Lower Mainland as per Recycle BC. And then from there, whether there's additional sorting or whatnot to make it those materials to their end markets.
Thank you.
Can I just add a couple pieces to that? So we as a District of Sechelt, I think as GM Rosenboom indicated, we don't determine where that goes. Recycle BC, when we signed up with Recycle BC, which is fairly recently, we didn't, I think it was last year, we didn't determine where that went. Our contract had to reflect getting the material to the site that Recycle BC said it needed to go to. So we had to ensure that, if they changed the location, that was reflected in our contract. So our hauler picks up materials and delivers it there, and that's the end of our piece. So if Recycle BC comes back and says, no, it's now going to be Grips up in Pender Harbor, we take it to Grips. That's it. So we have to cover those costs off. So they are the ones who have put out the RFP and asked for location on the Sunshine Coast, and then it's between Recycle BC and Gibson's Recycling at this point, how that actually runs. My understanding was it was actually a different location than what the residents go to, because they have scales there. They have to weigh the trucks when they come in and out, so they know the volume that they're dealing with, because that's part of the contract with Recycle BC and with us.
if I just have a follow-up, I'd be interested to know if any or what percentage of that materials ends up in our landfill as a result of being too contaminated a process.
I think we have that information actually, because part of our requirement under our contract is around contamination. So we could find that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Very interesting discussion, and one that I'm quite interested in. It sure is a puzzle. I kind of agree that maybe it is time for an overall service review of 350. I was following the enhanced recycling centers, the debate in Pender, because when we closed the landfill here and went to a transfer station, the concept was that there would be an enhanced recycling center co-located with the landfill, and therefore we would increase diversion that way. And the enhanced landfill, the enhanced recycling handled everything, tires, organics, everything. And so the idea was that would incent getting the recycling out of the landfill. I followed it through, and I talked to GM Rosenboom as well. And of course, time has passed, and we've made decisions that makes that original decision probably not anymore. But anyways, I'm wondering if it's a service review or simply an updated solid waste management plan that we're talking about here. And we do ensure that we look at the recyclables as well as the landfill and come up with an updated plan for the next umpteen years. I think that might be the way to go. That would be my suggestion anyways. Thanks.
Thank you. Since there are no further hands up yet, I'm going to jump in here because I've had a few days to think this over. So my first problem with this whole thing is that the strongest reason for us to do curbside pickup is to increase diversion of recycling from our landfill. Unfortunately, we have no data on what that diversion might be. We don't have any data on whether the amount of solid waste going to the landfill declined in Sechelt after they put in their recycling program. So we don't know what we can expect. And apparently there are no comparable regional districts in BC that have both curbside and depot service. So this could be a very expensive way to divert a pretty small amount of recycling. We don't know. Then we have Jim Rosenboom. Did you want to?
Yeah, the only at the agenda review I made an error, and you're repeating my error, so I thought I'll jump in. We are not the only one that are contemplating depots and recycling. We are a lot of the depot. Manager Cooper can explain this better. There are several communities that have both. However, none of them have such an advanced depot system like we have, where there's such a large uptake and such a large variety of materials already provided. A lot of communities, they have depots, but it's primarily glass and that kind of materials. So overall, we have depots that are pretty broad in their diversion. And as a result, a lot of people are going to the depot anyway, and that's not happening in the other communities. They only have curbside and maybe only bottle depot, and that's it.
Good, thank you. So the success of the Gibson's Recycling Depot is one of our challenges here. So we also have the problem that the actual we have the problem with hauling, picking up and hauling. So that part would be paid for by the rural areas, but the other impacts on the solid waste program would be paid for by everybody. And that is an equity issue. The other thing about hauling that troubles me is if we want to pick up residential recycling, we hire a commercial contractor who picks it up. And that's called residential recycling. But if a private contractor goes out and says they want to pick up residential recycling, then that's commercial recycling. And it can't be taken to our depot. And I have a big problem with that. That is a crazy system. And I think really that we need to talk to Recycle BC about this, lobby very, very strongly to get them to change this. It's very evident that a lot of people in the community want curbside recycling service. The question is, should we be the ones to deliver it? Because if a private hauler could do the curbside collection, then anybody who wanted it could get it and pay for it. And people who did not want to pay for the service or receive it would not have to pay for it through their taxes and utility bills. We're not equipped to do an opt-out system. We looked into this quite thoroughly on the organics pickup, and it's just not, it's too expensive, it's too complicated to try and do that. So we are in the situation where we have to charge everybody. So what are we charging them for? And what is the win that we get, as a regional district out of that? It's too late to get more life on our landfill. We're done. We might get a few more days on it, but we're not going to get a big win out of that. And I have a hard time. Fundamentally, the reason that people want the service is convenience. And that's not to be taken lightly. It is important for people. But are we willing to tax everybody primarily for convenience at this point? Having a hard time with that. And this was the biggest public engagement we ever had on this subject. So many people took the time to weigh in on this, and many of them said they wanted the service. I'm not ready at this point, with so many questions unanswered, to vote in favor of this. I do think we need to review our solid waste management plan. And I also think that we should make a really concerted effort to see if we can get this stupid Recycling BC regulation changed so it would allow private contractors to fill in the gap that we have in our services. I see hands have been going up. So, Director Lee.
Thank you. I was going to mention that I did contact some Pender residents about the fact they're paying for their curbside pickup of recycling and what did they think about it. And they're actually universally happy. They realize that they're paying for the convenience and they're paying extra and they're happy to do it because they also realize they could sort and take it for nothing. And so they just look at it as having someone else paying so they don't have to do it, which I think is an excellent model. So I support what you were saying. It should be able to go to the same place. It's all residents recycling. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience in Coquitlam. They have a transfer station in Coquitlam, and they have right next to the transfer station, they have a drop-off for recycling, and I call it you pre-sort and take it there and throw it in the bin yourself, the right bin. But they're doing all the same sorting that I'm doing here before I take it to grips. It's very, very familiar, except they, at the Coquitlam transfer station, they also take the metal. So that's a little bit better. And then right down the hill from where my mother-in-law was living, was a recycling center, and it was indoors in a big building, and it had sorting tables in it, and then you could take so you could go in, you could sort, and you could throw it into the very familiar big canvas bags that I see at Grips. And so if you didn't have the space at your own house, you can just collect it all into a big bag or in a couple, and you could take it down to this table and you could sort it. And they had the containers that you could throw it in as you sort, and then you go and dump them into the thing. And they still have curbside at the same time. So that's kind of why I say when I think we should update our solid waste management plan, we should understand, is that the model we want, or what do we want? And so that's why I've been puzzling over this whole thing all the time. So I wanted just to throw that in. Say there is some place we could go and look, that I have looked and I have used. I use both, the indoor one, and when we shut my mother-in-law's house down, we had such vast quantities of stuff because she was a bit of a hoarder. We had to use the actual transfer station and pre-sort it and take it there by the truckload. So, but it worked. It all worked, and it was nice.
Thank you. Director Ties.
So yeah, I appreciate what the chair said about getting private contractors to do it. I think probably the difficulty is then discerning between the supermarkets and those large, say, cardboard producers and private households dropping off at the depot and then not having to pay for that. And I don't know how to tackle that one. So I think, if you're picking up for residences, maybe you should be able to go to the depots as a private contractor, but then what holds you back from picking up some businesses as well? But overall, I've been asked about the curbside recycling here in Roberts Creek ever since I came into office, and it doesn't look like there's any curbside recycling on the near horizon. And it's frankly, in my opinion, it's it's starting to be a little bit embarrassing when the same people still ask me 3 years on, so where's that curbside recycling? And I said, well, we're probably another 3 years out, and this seems to be a fairly simple matter, and somehow it's getting very complicated. So I'm a little bit frustrated about this whole process, and I think it's a pretty straightforward thing. $40 a year is really not a huge expense, and we have the numbers that support curbside pickups. So I know we can fuss around the details forever and update our solid waste management plan, but ultimately, in my opinion, this is a fairly simple thing. And at least in Area D, I think we're very much in favor of it. So, but I know this is a board decision, so this is just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in and point out that on this agenda this morning, the only areas B, D, E, and F are voting, but of course, when it goes to the board, then everybody will vote, and that could be a different picture. That makes and rightfully everybody will vote because it will have an impact on the solid waste service for everybody. This is a interesting problem. Director Beamish.
Just further to what Director Lee was saying, that 5 years ago when Heather and I were hiking the Camino in Spain, as we came into smaller towns, villages or cities, walk through, at the neighborhood level, they had large recycling bins. And you put your bottles, your cans, your newspapers in, and people use them. It's a convenience of getting things as close to people as you can to enable them to recycle. And it may not be at the curbside, but it could be a block away. And so that when they're doing their normal business, as Director Hill says, they plan their trips and they take their recycling and they have a place to do it as they go by. And I thought that was a brilliant solution. I don't know what else they do, but they had these large, colorful bins. The only thing I found about them was that when you lived in a neighborhood, they were noisy. When you walked by or you heard the truck dumping them or picking them up, it was a very noisy process. So you'd want to make sure that there was some place that the noise was not a factor. But you could just see people going out and putting their bottles and dumping their bottles in these big compartmentalized bins, and they were hauled away as a unit, and then a clean bin was put in place. It's just another way of doing it, but getting it closer to the public who is looking for a service.
Okay. Thank you, Director Beamish. We do not at the moment have a motion on the floor. We have received this report, but we don't have a motion. Are we going to have a motion? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Well, we had a couple options at the beginning. It's yes or no, and it's no with further direction. So that is what I would be prepared to move. The language would be something like no, and further that the solid waste management plan be updated, and that the service be reconsidered then. So that's kind of where I'm yeah.
GM Rosenboom?
I defer this one to Manager Cooper. I think she will be able to provide some clarity.
Thanks, GM Rosenboom. I just wanted to highlight that we already have board direction through the budget process to initiate the solid waste management plan update. And I wanted to share, excuse me, that the first part or stage or phase of a solid waste management plan is a really deep dive into the existing programs and services and the funding and all of the financials. So by the nature of updating our solid waste management plan, all of that will occur through that first phase or first part of the solid waste management plan. Thank you.
Okay, Director Hiltz, would you like to recraft your motion?
I think there might be some more wording coming on, but it might be as simple as no. That might be the simple motion because other parts are in motion. But I think we're still working on the language here.
I think we are, especially as I'm not seeing a seconder yet. GM Rosenboom is waving. I'm looking hopefully at him.
I need your sign. Sorry. I think there is, from strictly, there is no resolution required, because if the board doesn't make a decision, they don't make a decision. I think what we have on the books is we have two feasibility studies for two feasibility functions for areas B and D. I think the board could make a decision on those. I'm not sure if they're interested in doing that today. Otherwise, we'll just keep them on the books. As Manager Cooper indicated, the solid waste management plan phase 1 will include that full service assessment, and that could include the discussion about services, inclusion of services currently provided by member municipalities.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
That would have been my question. Given that District of Sechelt, manages garbage pickup and recycling, and we're going into organics this fall, in the solid waste management plan update, will all of that information be included? Because if we're going to look at the service as a whole, it has to include everything in my world. But I don't know if that is what would be included. So we look at the service for the Sunshine Coast. I think you're saying yes, it would.
Yeah, thanks for the question. What it includes is a review of the solid waste services and programs provided by the SCRD and all of the financials, but it also looks at the whole solid waste system of the entire Sunshine Coast. So by that nature, it would include what is the town of Gibson's providing for their services, where does it go, not necessarily the financials, and same as the District of Sechelt and Sechelt Indian Government District.
Right. So in my world, that's not complete because it's the financials that is important as well. For, to include for the town of Gibson's District of Sechelt and SIGD, because that otherwise we don't have a complete picture. We have a picture of the SCRD, but we don't have what the SCRD's mandate is and how that's being reflected and being taken care of in the various areas.
So,
If all of if all of the local governments are happy to share that type of information, then we absolutely can include it. I don't believe it has been included historically, but that's not to say that we can't include it if the information is shared. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, I've got the dilemma of wanting to make a motion to say yes, but I don't think I'll have a seconder. And I also have the problem of not being able to voice my opposition to a no motion. So how do I do this? But I guess this is where we're at.
Indeed, this is where we're at. Director Beamish.
Yes, I think further, I had mentioned it previously, but I'd just like to make sure that anything we're doing considers the impact on the depot. Gibson's has a fairly small footprint for the depot, and if we start driving more commercial activity into that area, it might impact that as well. So I'd certainly want to hear from Tyler and his wife on how that is going to or could potentially impact them in that area.
Okay. I'm going to say that I would like us to do some serious advocacy on this. I don't know if we need a motion for it, but with our MLA and at UBCM and Recycle BC and anyone else who will stand and listen to us, Manager Cooper.
Thank you for the opportunity to share an update regarding the Ministry of Environment and their engagement that they conducted last fall was about the recycling regulation. And it included a number of potential topics or areas to change. And one of those was the commercial recycling to be included in the recycling regulations. And this week, the ministry just released the This Is What We've Heard document. So that's available online. So, but that's the limit of that information at this point, is this is what we've heard. So the next report that we are anticipating in several months from now, potential timeline or inclusion of commercial recycling somehow in some way in the regulation. We'll be more than happy to share that with the committee as well as the recycling depots at that time. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm just looking at our options. If we do not move any recommendations, the question that I have is, what direction do staff take on curbside? Do they just kind of like put that on the shelf for a while? Do we need to direct them to put it on the shelf? So I'm just wondering if, because it's part of the idea is we're trying to reestablish our priorities. And if this is a lower priority at this point, do we need to say that? Or can we just not say it and it doesn't become a priority? That's kind of, yeah, that's what I'm looking for staff. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt and not waiting for the chair to even allow me to speak. What could be done is a recommendation that no curbside recycling service is be established at this point in time, and that as part of the solid waste management plan, it will be reconsidered in conjunction with other curbside services currently provided by member municipalities.
I'll make that motion.
And I see a seconder. Good. We have a motion on the floor. I'm excited. Director Ties.
Yeah, I would be interested in entertaining creating a separate service for areas B and D, but considering that the director for area B is not here today and can't speak about it, I don't know how to proceed forward. I certainly wouldn't be interested in area D being the sole recycling pickup destination, or whatever you call it. I don't know if there's a way that we can maybe.
So perhaps we can bring this back to an agenda. Would September be suitable?
Or what we can do is we can bring back this topic once the ministry indicated their Manager Cooper might have something better for me.
Thanks, GM Rosenboom. I was going to offer, an alternative approach, which is that this fall that staff bring forward a report regarding the feasibility, like basically look at the funds that are available, and we can present options at that time. That would be this fall. And if we have information from the ministry, we can include it then. But then that would bring it forward from a financial perspective as an agenda item. And then B and D can discuss and vote accordingly how they'd like to proceed with those feasibility funds. Thank you.
I'm confused. I thought we couldn't spend our feasibility funds.
We can spend them only for B and D. So if the intent is to establish service for B and D only, if that's the item, then those funds could be spent, because those were collected for that specific purpose.
Right. I personally would like to see the report, but not until we hear back from the Ministry of the Environment, because that might be a game changer. If they are going to change some of the rules, then that may help us extricate ourselves from this dilemma. So do we, wait a minute, we do have a motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Yep, can we call the question?
Right.
Would it be useful for the motion to be repeated?
Yes, please.
Tracy, do you have it?
I have part of it, and that no curbside recycling service be established at this point in time. And as part of the solid waste management plan update, there's something else that was included there.
It will be reconsidered as part of the solid waste management update, including curbside recycling services currently provided by the member municipalities.
Just curbside, or would we want
Solid waste services.
solid waste services provided by the
solid waste services currently
Mhm.
provided by the member municipalities.
Mhm.
Okay, and that is still seconded. Manager Cooper?
Thank you. Just wanted to point out that the way the motion is stated right now, that no service be established, if we wanted to say no SCRD service, and also to define if that's no service for all of SCRD electoral areas B, D, E, and F, just to be clear as a standalone motion, what isn't being considered at this time.
We end up with a voting question here, because if we are talking about the establishment of curbside recycling in the rural areas, then it is a rural only vote. But if we're talking about the solid waste plan, then that means everybody votes. So do we need to break this into two separate motions?
I think that's at least to have two different votes on it. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So can we handle the second part first, which is about the solid waste plan? Tracy, I'll put you on the spot. What is the second half of the motion that we have on the floor?
Thank you, Chair. And further that the I'm just going to add SCRD curbside recycling service be reconsidered as part of the solid waste management plan update. That includes solid waste services provided by member municipalities.
Frankly, we don't need the first half of that motion because the second half of the motion does the same thing.
Mhm. So starting at that, the solid waste management plan incorporate the solid waste services provided by the municipalities or by the member municipalities.
I believe it was that curbside recycling be considered as part of the solid waste
Okay.
management review, etc.
Okay.
Sorry to do this to you, Tracy. I think we need to read it back one more time.
I didn't get what you wanted. It's not clear to me.
It was basically what you read the last time, except that it starts with that instead of and that. That curbside recycling services for the rural areas be reconsidered as part of the solid waste management plan review, which would include
Solid waste services.
That's currently provided by the member municipalities.
good. Director Ties is waving.
Yeah, I just wonder, does that then include options like B and D only service, and does that include the Ministry of Environment update? Is that all inclusive in this motion?
What I suggest is that this motion talks about all electoral areas, which would allow at later discussion, even prior to the solid waste management update, a decision to be made on B and D, if desired.
But this motion, everybody votes on.
Yeah.
And the B and D one would be more complicated. So we have a motion on the floor. It was seconded. Is it still seconded? Good. Yes, it's still seconded. So I'm going to call the motion. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Anyone opposed? All right. Would you like that recorded, Director Ties? All right.
So
Thank
can I
you.
make one further motion as a follow-up to this? That given that we're going to ask the member municipalities to provide information, could we send a request? So the SCRD requests that the member municipalities make available financial and other information as required to inform the solid waste management plan.
Good. Do I see a second? Yes, that is seconded. Thank you very much. Not seeing any discussion, going to call the question. All in favor? None opposed? Thank you, that passes. All right, have we exhausted this topic for the moment? I foresee it in our future again, though. Director Seegers.
It wouldn't be a motion I would make, but what I did hear was that the conversation with regards to recycling for areas B and D they'd like to have that revisited come September, or when the province or Ministry of Environment comes forward with further information. Well, I can't make that motion, so.
Director Ties could make that motion, though.
Let's hear from GM Cooper first.
Thanks for the upgraded position there, Director Ties. A motion, you're welcome to make the motion, but staff have noted the request for this information and can bring it forward. And we've also noted that we will hold off until we have the update from the Ministry of Environment about what their plans are, so it can be incorporated into it. So a motion isn't necessary. Staff will do it. Thanks.
Good. Thank you very much. Then I don't have to figure out who votes on it, but actually If it was B and D and B isn't there, I guess it would be everybody again, would it not? Or would it be all rural areas? Never mind. This is clearly time for a break. It's 10:45. Would everybody like to take a 5-minute break and reassemble at 11? Director Lee, 7 minutes. All right.
Sorry, 10, I've got 10:45 and you said 11?
I'm sorry. See, I need a break at this point. All right. Why don't we reassemble at 10:55?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back to the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting of Thursday, June 10th, 2021. We are on item number 5 of our agenda, which is on the amended agenda, which is the contract for the Seashell landfill drop-off remediation project.
Thank you, Director McMahon, Chair McMahon. On May 24th of this year, the remediation and construction phase of this project started to remediate and to build a new drop-off area at the Seashell landfill started. The first several weeks, the works consisted of just prepping the entire area, clearing out and demolishing several structures, and primarily also compacting the ground to assess and address all the voids that were there because of the drywall decomposing over the years. We expected that there would be some differences in areas where there would be a lot of voids and not a lot of voids, and that indeed was the case. In some areas, we found voids with about 60 to 70 centimeters depth. So significant voids that we're glad that we now have addressed. The total effort required from the compaction to address the entire area has been in excess of what we anticipated. So there were more efforts was required to compact the entire area, which resulted in an additional expenditure of about $23,500. As well, during the first several weeks, we noticed that swallows were starting to nest in the lock hole in the former drop-off area, and we want to reuse those locks in our new drop-off area. Because they are confirmed to be tree swallows, they're federally protected species, and hence we cannot disturb those nets until all the swallows, little new swallows, have fledged, which could result in delay of the project for 1.5 to several months and at significant additional cost. So instead of delaying the project, staff confirmed that it was more cost efficient to purchase new locks instead of reusing the old ones and reuse the old ones at a future project. That's also resulting in an additional cost. We also achieved some cost savings. So the total net increase or budget shortfall is close to $160,000, and we're proposing to fund those in part by additional short-term debt and $30,000 from existing operational budget. And staff are more than happy to answer any questions you might have. What I can include is that we're currently predicting the project to be completed by the end of July, which is earlier than first anticipated.
Thank you very much. Director Beamish.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I don't see it referenced anywhere in the report, but it appears to me that what we're doing actually is purchasing assets that could be used in the future and should be shown as much. It's not money that is actually being spent that there'll be no recovery on. There's still going to end up being a bunch of lot blocks that will be assets of the municipality or the regional district and can be used elsewhere. And I think that should be somehow referenced in here as to be shown as kind of pre-purchasing an asset in some sense.
That's correct. That's a correct remark. Those assets, those lock blocks, they can indeed be used at future projects, solid waste projects, or for other divisions within the SRD.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Yes, that's a curiosity question. You mentioned the money was coming from an operational reserve. I would have expected it to be a capital reserve item.
I can explain that. If you look at the budget, amended budget currently depicted at page 19C, you can see that there is an increase of 30,000 in bin rental and container services. That's what can be funded out of current existing operational budget.
Good, thank you.
You, Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'm just a little confused. Oh, hang on. Okay, so that's 2020. Okay, so we're looking at the one 19A through 19D now. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and then that's in addition to the one Annex C. Okay. I'll make the recommendations as on page 19A.
Seconder? I see a seconder. Thank you. Do we have any further discussions about lock blocks or swallows? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. So if this did not go ahead, the end result would be the project would be delayed till that's the main issue, is the delay of the project. If
The project would be delayed at a cost that's most likely higher than the additional cost we're having right now, because if it would be delayed, the contractor would most likely would have to demobilize and then mobilize again, and there will be most likely all kind of additional costs, given that he has all kind of materials and supplies coming in as we speak or at the moment, and if they all would need to be delayed, there's all kind of other ripple effects that would be a result of a delay, and it could even be that the project would not be delayed for would not be completed for sometime this fall.
so spend a little bit more now, we get a better project, we get it done. That's kind of where we are. Yeah.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Just further to my previous comment, would it be appropriate to show, to reflect in the resolution that the existing lock blocks be shown as inventory, asset and inventory of the regional district?
Manager Cooper.
Thanks. I imagine GM Rosenboom is taking some notes. I'm not sure if he can correct me if I'm wrong, that a motion wouldn't be required to do that, but I'm assuming that that's what he's taking notes for, so that we can do that internally. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's fair. They would show up at some point on an asset list. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they're of such an amount that if one of the member municipalities ever need them, they are available for purchase.
So the used lock block sale. Okay, I'm going to call the question on this. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Thank you. Next item up is number 6. Landfill Engineering Consulting Services Contract Amendment.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The purpose of this report is to seek board authorization to amend the SCRD's contract with XCG Consulting Limited to align with the work that XCG is to complete by the end of their contract term, and all work is being completed within approved budget. Thank you, and staff are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Do I see any questions? Director Seegers.
Oh, the recommendations as on page 20.
And I see a seconder. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just interested if there's a little bit more details on the complementary projects and the pending project as noted on page 20, and how this all moves us forward a little bit.
Thanks for the question. The project that's listed in the report refers to having XCG conduct a detailed analysis for us regarding our design and operations enclosure plan, use of cover material, the calculations behind that, and how it relates to the cover material that we need to use on our site. So making sure that those two are aligned, or if we need to make changes, then we can note that for our update to our DOCP for short, Design Operations and Closure Plan, which is slated to be completed and has to be completed next year. So it will help inform that project as well as make sure that we're in alignment with it, with our operations. Thank you.
Director Hiltz?
So the cover material, it's like use not too much, not too little, just the right amount, and maximizes our airspace. Is that kind of what that? Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Thank you very much.
Director Hiltz is talking about Goldilocks.
Right. Next up.
Goldie blocks is what I'm calling them. Goldie blocks.
Okay. Book recycling program. Manager Cooper.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The purpose of this report is to inform the committee of 2021 book recycling program expenditures to date and provide some recommendations regarding the budget for this program due to increased tonnage of books received when compared to the budget. And thank you, and staff are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions or are there any motions? Director Hiltz, I believe you're up first.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a successful program needs a little bit more money to keep it going. So yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendations on page 22.
Thank you. And I see a seconder. Any further discussion? Director Seegers.
Thank you. I know that some of the programs that operated prior to the start of the pandemic have not been operating, and a lot of those will take used books. I'm just wondering if I mean, we don't know, right? So we might actually see a drop in volume going to the recycle depot once those programs are back up and running. So I noticed that this was a 1 year. Is that looking to be revisited then down the road?
Thanks for the question. The recommendations include the budget increase for 2021 as well as 2022. So therefore, we're making sure that we have the funds available should that tonnage in 2022 remain consistent with this year. That said, the SCRD pays based on the tonnage. So if the tonnage decreases, then that budget wouldn't be needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes. Excellent. We are tripping along to tipping fee update. Over to, is it Manager Cooper again?
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The purpose of this report is to provide a follow-up report as requested from the committee and board regarding tipping fees for fridges containing ammonia and tires as it relates to amending SCRD landfill site bylaw 405. Staff prepared 3 options in the report for each material for the committee's consideration. Option 1 is as presented at the May 13, 2021 ISC meeting and are the staff recommended options. Option 2 includes alternative approaches to full and beyond full cost recovery that includes the discussions heard at that May ISC meeting, as well as PMAC recommendations, which are included on the agenda of today's meeting, which includes above cost recovery for tires on rim. Option 3 would result in a decreased service level, and staff are seeking board direction regarding how to amend or not bylaw 405. Thank you, and staff are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Okay, I'm going to start this off by suggesting that we divide this into 3 sections. Let us start with the Freon and ammonia appliances. Then let us move on to tires with and without their rims, and then let us finish with the tires filled with foam. And that, I think, is a logical grouping. Director Seegers.
Perfect, because I was going to talk about fridges, appliances containing ammonia. So just the day after, I think, we had our last meeting on this topic, Gibson's Recycling indicated that they have actually joined the Major Appliances Recycling Roundtable and are accepting major appliances at no charge. So I'm wondering why we would even want to continue accepting them at the landfill. If they can take them down there at no charge and drop them off. It's what, 20 kilometers to take it for the, you know, saving the $45 or $80 or whatever it would be. And we could still look at joining MARR. If we are successful, we could then start taking them again. So I don't know what staff would say to that suggestion.
Staff?
Thanks for what is likely the discussion to come. It relates to the discussion last time regarding tires. Not that we're talking about tires this time, it's appliances. It's a service level decision. So to say no now would also trigger a bylaw amendment. And then to say yes later at a different rate, which would be zero upon starting with the MAR program, would also trigger a bylaw update, as well as numerous, obviously, service changes with staff and also communications with the public. So I'm hesitant to make a service change now, or to recommend a service change now that says, no, we're not going to take them, to then turn around later this year or early next year to say, okay, yes, we will take them, but now it'll be at $0. But I will share that when residents do come to the Seashell landfill or the Pender Harbor transfer station, they are advised that they can take the appliances that are under that program to Gibson's Recycling Depot at no charge. So staff are aware that there has been sort of a decrease in that type of material being received at the site. So where I'm going with that is that people are sort of on their own making those decisions as to where they want to deliver the material based on either convenience or, in this case, the cost as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. How is the shortfall covered now? We obviously have a shortfall right now.
Thanks for the question. So just also to highlight that appliances containing ammonia are excluded from the Major Appliance Recycling Roundtable or MAR program. So that's why it's included in here with those variety of options. And to answer Director Lee's question, the shortfall on the ammonia appliances right now is being funded by, if there are excess tipping fee revenue within the Seashell landfill or the Pender Harbor transfer station operating budgets.
Okay, and can staff identify the ones that are $85 or $30?
Thanks for the question. As discussed at the previous meeting, it has to do with the coil size on the back of the appliance. So they're much larger on the appliances that contain ammonia. Thanks.
So you're, just as follow up on that, you are comfortable they can identify them, because I am aware that quite often those coils are covered by metal. Okay, thank you. So my last comment is, could we simply haul them without getting them remediated on site? Could we simply haul them to Gibson's and let them bear the cost of that? And would that be cheaper?
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, and I definitely appreciate the idea for potential cost savings, but it's a safety concern. So both the fridges that contain Freon or appliances that contain Freon, as well as appliances that contain ammonia, are segregated in a separate location, as well as propane tanks, so that they're safe when they're decommissioned in order to be recycled. So I wouldn't feel comfortable suggesting that we move them until they've been decommissioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm following up on the service level topic of to take them at the landfill or not to take them at the landfill. And my question is about, like, for the landfill attendants, in terms of service provision, having this option to take them probably makes a customer service, rather than saying, you got a hauler come in and say, no, we can't take it somewhere else. They're already packaged up, they're ready to go. It seems like it would facilitate the customer service end of things for the landfill operations.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, I would say let's leave it as recommended by staff, and if folks want to pay $80, then let them pay $80, or let them drive it to Gibson's. But as long as they're being informed that that option is available, I think I'm okay with that.
Is that a motion? She said, hopefully.
Sure. I don't know if we need 3 different motions, or if we just talk it through and maybe we'll land on option 1 for all of them.
I think it would be more efficient to do 3 motions just so that we don't get ourselves confused, but that may be me. Manager Cooper?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify a comment from Director Ties, if I may, in that it's only the appliances that contain ammonia that are included here for the recommendation that are subject to that higher tipping fee. It's the appliances containing Freon that the FCRD currently has the lower tipping fee at $25. And then if residents would like, they can transport those materials to the Gibson's Recycling Depot at no charge. Just wanted to make sure everyone was clear before voting. Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe Director Ties has moved option 1 for metal appliances with ammonia. And do we have a seconder? And that's seconded. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I have issue with this. You know, we've discussed some large fee increases in the past, and concerns about illegal dumping and what have you. And I know that there are other jurisdictions where the landfill takes refrigerant containing appliances for free, because they want to make sure that they're being taken care of properly in an environmentally secure manner. I could see somebody looking at this $80 fee and taking a hatchet to the back of the freezer or the fridge, and then they can take it to scrap metal once all the ammonia has escaped into the atmosphere. So I'd be in favor of option 3, to try and encourage people to be bringing these things responsibly in for recycling, if we couldn't go all the way to free. Thank you.
All right. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Do we have on our website, where somebody is looking to see what the cost is to dispose of a fridge or one of these appliances, that these are our costs at the landfill, and this is what it costs at Gibson's Recycling, so that they can make the choice before they show up at the landfill?
I'm just going to interject that I do not believe that Gibson's Recycling accepts the ammonia fridges. Is that correct? Manager Cooper.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that is correct. The Gibson's Recycling Depot does not collect appliances containing ammonia because they are outside of the scope of the MAR program. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
I missed that. Sorry. Thanks.
I'm going to call the question. So, all those in favor of the motion on the floor? Okay. All those opposed? Okay, that passes. That was 4-3. So,
I'd like that
next.
recorded, please, Chair.
Yes, sorry. Okay, and Director Lee as well. And you might as well record me while you're at it. Tires. Does anybody want to move some options with tires here? Director Toth.
I'd like to move option 3 for tires. That if they're off the rim, we don't accept them up there because there are plenty of free recycling options available for people.
Do I have a seconder on that? Yes, I have a seconder. All right. Now we're off. Do I hear any other bids? I mean, do we have any further, Director Hills?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I am supportive. I'm not supportive of not taking them at the landfill. I think from a customer service point of view, to make someone turn around when they are loaded up to go somewhere else, I think this will lead people to the right behavior, but I don't want to hit them with a hammer right away. So I think this is leading opposed to dictating. So that I wouldn't support option 3 of not taking them at the landfill.
Thank you. Director Ties.
Yeah, I'm with Director Hills on this. There's a lot of people who might have a mixed load, and then to just send them off with a tire or multiple tires, just not a great vibe. So yeah, I think if they want to pay for it, let them pay for it.
Okay, Director Seegers.
Thank you. I think one of the questions we asked, and I don't know if staff actually found the answer to this, was, is there a limit at the various places? I know there's a list in the report, various places that actually accept tires off of rims. Do they take, is there a limit on what they take? Do they only take certain models? Is there any information we know about that?
Thank you. Staff.
Thanks for the question. On page 25 in the second paragraph down, there is a limit of 4 per day. And then in terms of what are taken, it's the passenger and light to medium truck tires, which that's identifiable by, P, LT, et cetera. That's written right on the tire. So it would be up to the individual businesses to review those tires and say yes or no. But there is a 4 tire per limit per day per person. Thank you.
Right, but they only accept the models they sell? Do they take, I mean, like if I get tires off coast somewhere, or they come with my car and I put different ones on, will they take those?
Thanks for the question and for the clarification. If any of those locations, which they are, as part of Tire Stewardship BC, they are required to take the tire based on what is stamped on it to identify passenger, light truck, medium truck, not the brand. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment with regards to not wanting to turn people away with the loads. We already don't accept wood waste up there. We already don't accept green waste up there. We already don't accept, recycling materials up there. You have to drive past at least one tire shop in order to get to the landfill, unless you're coming from Sandy Hook. And frankly, I don't feel that we can spare the space up there for the giant tire piles that we used to have in the past. So that's sort of where I'm coming from on this.
Thank you. And Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I am in favor of option 1, but I have some questions. Will the tipping fee recover our cost, all our cost for the tires? And the second question is, what happens to the tires on rims?
Thank you. Staff?
Thanks for the question. Option 1 for the tire, well, actually all the options for option 1 relate to cost recovery in terms of contracted services or other types of expenditures. Doesn't cover overhead. That said, option 2 is in excess, so it's beyond full cost recovery. And then in terms of the tires on rim, they are collected by Tire Stewardship BC and taken back to their facility where the rim is removed at that time. That's why there's the additional charge, is to pay for the removal of that rim. So that's the cost differential between on rim and off rim. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, which is option 3 for the tires, and I'm going to call the question. So all those in favor of the motion?
Sorry, clarification. Are we just talking about passenger tires, rim removed? Or are we talking about all tires?
We're talking about all the tires except those filled with foam.
And the recommendation was number 3 for all? In the motion?
My recommendation that I moved was for option 3 for the passenger tires on and off rim, as well as medium truck tires on and off rim.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we are voting. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed?
Sorry, Manager Cooper had her hand up, so I didn't vote.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that I believe the original motion was for option 3 for the rim removed. So looking at the tires that we accept with the rims removed that are able to be distributed or dropped off at locations throughout the Sunshine Coast, not for passenger tire or medium truck tire on rim, which are not accepted at those locations.
Right, I think that was my understanding as well. Maybe we can check with our recorder.
Yes, thank you. That's what I can confirm. I had the motion as, and that the SCRD no longer accept passenger tires rim removed.
Okay, my error. So that is the motion on the floor, and we're going to vote again. So all those in favor? Okay, 2 in favor. All those opposed? And we have 4 opposed, so that does not pass. Can we get another motion, please?
I have my vote recorded, please.
Yes. Okay. Also, Director Toth? Okay. Thank you. Director Ties.
That was a hard one. I actually see their point, but at the same time, I think it's a good customer service move to still accept it if that's desired. So I'll go with option 1 for all tires except the ones filled with foam.
Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder. Excellent. I'm not seeing more hands, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? Okay, that's anybody opposed to the motion on the floor? Director Hiltz, would you like that recorded? No. All right. Whew. And now we get to tires filled with foam. So, do we have any motions on this one? Director Toth.
This one's easy as far as I'm concerned. They're garbage. We should accept them as garbage. I will move option 1 for tires filled with foam.
Any seconders? Yes, that is seconded. Thank you. Any more discussion? Not seeing any. I'm calling the question. All those in favor of the motion? That's everybody. Thank you very much. That passes. And Director Toth.
I'm going to let Manager Cooper go first.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight the additional recommendations that are at the top of page 24 regarding and that these tipping fees be incorporated into a future amendment of bylaw 405, as well as and further that these recommendations be forwarded to the June 10th, 2021 board meeting. Thank you.
Right. Could somebody please move that? Seconded. Thank you. All right. All in favor? Good. That passes. Thank you very much. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to bring this up at the previous meeting, but we sort of ran short on time, and I'll try and keep my comments short because we're running out of time again. Is there an opportunity here to update our signage at the bottom of Dusty Road? Because right now, I think when I counted last, there was 4 different signs for the SCRD landfill. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to include information about here's where you can recycle these particular products for free. You know, you don't even need to come up the hill if you've got a refrigerator, for example. Just, yeah, wondering if there's an opportunity for us to upgrade our signage at the bottom of Dusty Road, and if staff would like a motion to move forward on that.
Thank you, staff.
Thanks for the comment, and I do recall that being raised at the last meeting as well. It is sort of in our work plan. Once we have some additional time, given our current projects, we plan to review all of the signs at both sites, so at the Penna Harbor Transfer Station and the Seashell Landfill, to look to remove and reduce and also clarify. And any changes to tipping fees or locations or where things can go, the SCRD updates it in two ways. One, as appropriate on our website, as well as our paper copy of our recycling directory or PDF on the website, as well as within the SCRD Collects app. So those are updated, for instance, with the latest information regarding the Mara appliances at $0 at Gibson's Recycling Depot. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm just going to add the green waste drop-off in Gibson's has, I think I counted 9 signs. Admittedly, there's not much to do when you're waiting in line there, but that's an awful lot of signs, and they all have the Town of Gibson's logo on them, and none of them has the SCRD logo. So it's not clear that the service is open to residents of the rural areas, at least not from the signage. Okay, we are moving on to Annex F, which is the Transit Future Action Plan Progress Report. So, welcome, Manager Walton.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. At the February 25th, 2021 meeting, the board approved the terms of reference for the Sunshine Coast Transit Future Action Plan. The terms of reference included a timeline that provided details regarding meetings with the project working group, key stakeholders, and public engagement process. The purpose of this report is to provide the board with a progress update on the Transit Future Action Plan to date, and staff are happy to answer any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Do we have questions? I have one, and that is, well, it's sort of a question, but there is now a youth council on the Sunshine Coast, and I was wondering if perhaps we could reach out to them for their engagement in this plan, because the youth are very interested in transit.
Thank you for that. I've noted that down, and staff will reach out to the youth council to see, particularly through the public engagement, so they're very aware of this.
Super. Thank you very much. Director Beamish.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Director McMahon. I had that as well to ask. I think that when they made their original presentation, they actually included some recommendations relative to transit in that presentation, and I think that should be looked at, as well as their recognition as a group on the coast that is providing input to local government. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. My other question was whether the future plan process includes options like transit on demand, or is it simply the conventional services we already have?
Thank you for that question. Through the stakeholder and project working group sessions, transit on demand did come up, and I believe BC Transit will be looking at those options to include some aspect of that in the plan, if they come out as a priority that the board endorses through the final Transit Future Action Plan.
Super. Thank you very much. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'm looking at the information here, and we are reaching out to people who use use transit. How do we get access to those people who don't know what we offer, don't use transit? I mean, they're saying they're going to use, public consultation, but how do we get those people who have no interest in transit because they don't know what it does? I mean, it's difficult, but is there a way to do that?
Thank you for that question. We can reach out to BC Transit, who have a lot of experience doing these types of engagement processes, to see what they do in other communities. Some of the things that we're looking at as well are providing paper forms of the engagement process and establishing 4 or 5 locations where we can put those out that might gather information from people that don't use transit but use other facilities on the Sunshine Coast, i.e. rec centers, libraries, senior centers.
Grocery stores.
Yeah, so we've again, with BC Transit's experience, limiting the amount of places we provide paper copies makes it easier to gather all the information back. So there's that fine line of getting too many paper copies out there and make it complex to get as much information back. But staff will consult with BC Transit on their experience in other communities.
Right, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be a paper copy at the grocery stores. It could be, hello, we're doing a survey on future transit. If you do not use transit, we want to hear from you. Why don't you use transit? And here's where you go to tell us.
Thank you for that suggestion. I've noted that down.
I'm one of those people. Okay, I am one of those people. I live on a transit route, and I don't use transit. So what would it take? I'd have to look at that and say, okay, what would it take to have me take transit? But that might be information that would be valuable to, because if we're looking at getting information from people who use transit, or don't have access to transit, what about the people who have access to it and aren't using it?
Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, turn me into a transit user.
No, it's a good thing because obviously that's what we want is people to grow transit on the Sunshine Coast. What I can do is reach out to BC Transit through the marketing aspect. I know they'll be making some posters up that we'll be putting up around the coast to advise people of the public engagement sessions. So I think through the marketing aspect, we can endeavor to put more of those up in different places, not necessarily the paper copy, but to point people in the direction that there will be a public engagement happening, and that this is how the steps they can take part in that.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more hands, and we do have an agenda that we need to move through. So I'm going to thank you for the transit report, and I think we are going to move on to item 10, which is the GIS system award. And who's tackling that one?
Thank you, Chair McMahon.
Hang on a second. I have two hands up. Are you both on transit? Or are you on? No? Oh, okay, thank you. Over to you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to renew our GIS mapping software usage agreement for 3 years through Esri Canada as a sole source provider. The cost is expected and in the budget, including a reasonable inflationary increase. Staff are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Director Seegers.
I'll move the recommendations on page 36.
And that's seconded. Do we have any further questions, Director Hiltz?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just looking at the recommendation number, the 106,000 versus the 99,000 that's listed on page 37, and they're different. And is one right, or are they both right?
Thanks for the question, Director Hiltz. They're both right, yes. The one showing in the body of the report is the base cost, and the one under the recommendation is the money out the door, which includes the PST tax on it. We will initially pay GST as well, but then it is collected back.
Thank you very much. Director Ties.
Yeah, thanks for the report. I do wonder whether there are, first of all, are there any other competitors? And second of all, I do worry about something where we're sort of shoehorned into a contract, because it would be hugely inconvenient to change it, even if there were competitors. So I think that's just something that I wanted to note. I don't think there's a solution here at this point, but I guess my question is, are there any competitors that we could go to if things became ridiculously expensive?
Thanks for the question, Director Ties. Yes, it is always a concern if renewals come from software vendors where we see, egregious increases after you've spent considerable time using a product, which this one we have. We've made investments in Esri technology and software since the early 2000s, so nearly 20 years. However, we are seeing, as I mentioned, a reasonable inflationary increase. In fact, the last 3-year contract showed no inflation over the 3 years. And we did reach out to them and have a dialogue with Esri when they made this quote to determine what was reasonable. And so staff is satisfied with that and the services, and the product is well received by the public as well.
Good. Thank you very much. I am going to call the question on the motion on the floor. All those in favor? None opposed, I see. Thank you. That passes. And we can move on to the Seashell Aquatic Facility, which is a large hole in the ground into which we pour money. Over to staff.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. I'll offer a brief intro, and then we have our Manager of Facility Services, Ken Robinson, and our Facility Services Coordinator, Alan Van Velzen, here as technical resources if required. So as the committee knows, staff have been working hard to address the condition of the sprinkler system at the Seashell Aquatic Center. Unexplained, though not unprecedented, microbiological growth has damaged the system and resulted in the need for replacement ahead of schedule. Following board direction, staff tendered the work, and the result, as reported here, is that the cost of the project is substantially higher than was anticipated based on both our asset management plan and an engineer's estimate. Staff believe that the primary factor driving this is the unique market conditions created by COVID, which have increased building material costs in a wide range of categories by 300% or more. And I'll paraphrase a very well-respected longtime builder on the coast who recently said to our CAO that this is the scariest time to build he's ever seen in his career. We do a regular review of our capital plans, and we have made updates to costing parameters over time. A pandemic, though, and the supply chain changes that come with that are not a factor that has been specifically considered. Based on a general and optimistic understanding that market conditions are temporary, staff looked for any way that the project could be delayed, phased, or otherwise cost reduced. And we did this work in close coordination with the Seashell Fire Department, who were extremely helpful in developing the options that are outlined in the report. Based on timing for our maintenance shutdowns and to award the project, a decision is needed in a timely fashion. Not proceeding with one of the options in the report is likely to require closure of the facility based on fire protection requirements. And so after carefully considering alternatives, staff reluctantly conclude that proceeding with the system replacement by increasing short-term borrowing and awarding the contract is recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
I have a son who's in the same such a situation. He builds schools out in Alberta. And what he told me recently is that the cost of steel, the quotes he gets, they're good for 3 days. That's it. So you've laid out what the implications are and what the impacts would be should we not move forward now. In the end, it probably will be more costly and require more downtime in the facility. So I am begrudgingly moving recommendations on page 39 as presented. Thank you, staff, for the work.
Do I see a seconder? Okay, I see a seconder. Good. We can discuss the motion on the floor. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. The underlying conditions are still unknown. So my question is, if we go and we install a new sprinkler system, in 15 years, if we don't know what the problem was, are we going to be in the same situation that we build in an asset that hasn't identified the problem that caused the problem in the first place? So that's what, how do we Is this related to salt water? Why did the last system fail? And what is the expectation that the new system will last longer than the new system? And so that's an outstanding question. And then part of the original discussion of this item was, is this occurring in other regional district facilities? And so what other problems are there that we don't know about, that we haven't found? So why can we expect a different result with this one than the original one, I guess, is the summary.
Thanks for the question. I'll take the second part, and then I'll ask one of our technical experts to speak to how the new system could help prevent this from occurring. But in terms of what else is out there that we don't know, we do have a rigorous and industry standard sprinkler inspection and maintenance regime for our buildings that have fire protection systems like this, and so we do our best to understand what issues are out there and manage them as we learn about them. And as I mentioned at the time that this issue was first raised, there may be more internal inspection type requirements coming to the industry because we are not the only owner that's affected by this. But for the time being, we are doing the best that we can for the systems that we own. And in terms of the new system, perhaps Manager Robinson or Coordinator Van Velzen could speak to that, please.
Ian, I'd be happy to speak to that. So the proposed system actually includes the optional Potter Aqua N2 wet inerting system. So that is a chemically induced system which will stop the microbiologic growth from reoccurring. As far as your question with regards to what about the other facilities, we're hoping to encompass in our annual inspections this year to potentially take out one or two of the sprinkler heads and just do a quick inspection to see if we've got anything similar like that going on. We still have to get costing though to do that from our contractor. Thank you.
And so this chemical system is it's a very small incremental cost. It's the newest technology, and on the basis of the life cycle value of the system is the best practice at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Toth. Thank you.
I'm just looking at the bottom of page 41, where it does talk about the phased approach. And it's there's an estimate there for $388,000 on a phased approach, plus a fairly hefty contingency, which I accept. But staff don't have confidence in that number. And so the 3-year project cost estimate, $750,000 might be considered more reasonable. So I'm wondering where that 388 number comes from. If staff believe it's going to cost twice as much as that 388, where did that 388 come from in the first place? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Director. That was built off of engineering advice, which in turn is built off of standard industry costing. But as I mentioned in my introduction, and as Director Seegers commented, what was industry standard even 6 months ago, or perhaps even more recently than that, does not prove out in the market today. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Yeah, for me, the costs have escalated so much. I mean, February, a project budget of $180,000 was set based on a consulting engineering advice. And now we're up to June and we're into a totally different picture. And I wonder if we should take a time to kind of peer review this, have another look at it. It's we're taking advice from one engineer, which help us set a budget, which no way relates to the reality of the cost of the project. And to me, I just don't know where those numbers come from. to be that high and that different from the estimate. And that's where I have a problem. I mean, what are we actually doing here? We're just spending money. I'm just not happy with it.
Thank you, Director Beamish. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, with what Director Beamish has said and what I said previously, you know, we are at the height of COVID industry shortages, and like we're literally looking to replace this at the worst possible time in the industry. I'm wondering if we're going to come in a little closer to the 500 if we do the phased approach, and certainly that extends our timeline out. Maybe the industry becomes a little more reasonable as we get out of COVID. You know, we're already starting to see lumber prices falling. So I'd be more in favor of the phased approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'd like staff to comment on the quote, the 180,000. I believe at the time that quote was not for a complete replacement of the whole system. I may be wrong in that, but that was my recollection of that we were looking at only part of it having to be replaced, and that as further information has come to light, it's actually become more extensive. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm good with that.
Thank you for the question, Director. I don't have the earlier staff report in front of me, unfortunately, so I can't confirm that you are wrong. But my recollection is, unfortunately, Director, that you are wrong. I think we accepted the high probability that if much of the system had issues, that the whole system had issues in putting forward those numbers earlier in the year. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Hiltz.
I did go back and look at the original estimates from that report, which was February 18th PCD. And to quote, it says full replacement of the sprinkler system was estimated at 135,000 Class C, with a 30 going with the 30%, which took it to 180,000. So that's what I read. So yeah, I'm also in the camp of how do we go from a good solid Class 3 estimate at 180,000 for a full replacement, and we ended up at 700. And the only thing I could see in that was that the water conditioning wasn't part of the original scope of the engineer's cost estimate. That's how I saw it.
Okay, so we're trying to guess whether costs will go up or costs will go down. In a pretty difficult situation here. We do have a motion on the floor, which is to go with the recommendations on page 39. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? Okay, that's 3 in favor. All those opposed? 3 opposed. Whoa. Very exciting.
So that's defeated.
It is defeated. Yes. So we need another motion. Director Beamish.
I would actually like to hear what Strategic Mechanical's comments would be on this new cost estimate and see where they feel that they were in error in the estimate they gave. Or what they feel, see if they support the change that's based upon industry costs.
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. So the phased approach described in option 2 would be a different project with a different timeline. Actually, it's 2. It's 2 projects because it's a the linear heat fire alarm project, and then it is a phased sprinkler project. And so both would need to be tendered following our purchasing policy, and the market would respond with comments, I guess, to answer the director's point. Thank you.
But I think my point was that we go back to strategic mechanicals, and just see what happened, how those numbers got so far out of whack. Well, sorry, go back to the original engineer. I apologize, who gave us a proposal of $180,000, and see how those prices got so out of whack. See what his comment is on those changes before we do anything else.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question, which is, were the options presented in order of preference by staff? So was your first choice option 1 and your second choice option 2 and your third choice option 3? Like, I'm trying to determine where we're going to go here. I see the CAO coming to our rescue.
Well, I don't know if I'm coming to anyone's rescue on this one, but I'll share my thoughts on this, and GM Hall might have some additional thoughts. We were all shocked, frankly, when the bids came back, or the bid came back, and that was the cost. It wasn't a little over. It was over in a way that I've never experienced a bid to come back in all the projects I've ever seen tendered in a local government. So that was shocking. So then the question is, oh my goodness, what do we do about this now? And we looked at this thing 6 ways to Sunday. We liaised with the fire department in Seashell. We tried to look at, what if we try this in a phased way? Well, we could do a phased approach. It has large implications in terms of effort, retendering, uncertainty. It would definitely mean that the project budget, the 700,000 or whatever it is out the window. We don't know what that costs anymore because the quote wouldn't be any good anymore. And we don't know ultimately what the final price will be in a phased approach either, because we haven't had a chance to tender it and we haven't heard back from the market. So we tried our best. We overturned, in this case, every rock we could think of because of the shocking cost that came back. And just, almost like Darnelda said at the beginning of this, it is with a bitter taste in our mouth that we recommended option 1 as in order of preference from a staff perspective, given all the work that we put in after receiving that bid. And Ian, if there's anything you'd like to do to expand on that, I welcome it.
One point to add is that there's an interface with operations here, and so there's the cost of the project, but there's also the impact on operating the facility. So that the whole costs extend beyond just the project itself. Thanks.
And insurance.
So just to be clear, possible costs in terms of operating the facility are not included in this costing. Is that correct? This is just...
That's correct, Chair. And it is difficult to assess those without knowing how the market would respond to the timing, for example, for a phased or a delayed project. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Ties.
I do wonder if we should see if we can find somebody else to give us a bid, because I feel somewhat uncomfortable with all of this. I think COVID, yes, but does that mean it should almost triple? I don't know.
Okay, Director Hiltz.
For me, I would separate it into 2 pieces. There's I'm going to call it the bitter pill of the project we have versus how we got to the bitter pill in the first place. So I might separate out those 2 because for me, it becomes the service level of the pool and keeping it open and being ready for September in terms of operational. So I see that as that service level. How we got here from 180K to 700K for a system that was supposed to last 15 years or 20, 30 years and only lasted half that. I think that's a bit of a different topic. And I could see separating out those recommendations. So I'm still in favor of the bitter pill. But I certainly would like to understand how we get into this situation in terms of asset management, project management, and how we ended up here. So I could see them as two pieces.
Okay, Director Beamish.
Yeah, I hear staff saying that we have to go back to retender, but could we not actually sit down with the contractor here and negotiate? It certainly has been done before on projects where you've got one bidder and say, well, look, we can't get there, but what could we do? Could you work with us on these options, and how could that be done? Because you hate to throw the bid away in one sense, but since they're the only one who came to the table, but they also have to have a reality that this is public money. These are costs that we did not anticipate. Is there a way that they can make it work by reducing, extending timeline, reducing scope, or doing different things that would make it work? I know it's been done before. We negotiate with the low bidder or negotiate with a single bidder.
Thank you. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm extremely uncomfortable with 2/3 of $1 million going out the door in a single bidder situation. I recognize the market sucks right now for availability of resources, and so I'm really interested in knowing how we can get to a slightly gentler market. The one thing that I don't see in the report is it is mentioned that there's an increase in insurance costs by going with either option 2 or option 3. I'm looking to see if staff have any indication on what that increased cost might be. Thank you.
We don't at this time. Thanks.
Okay, we are at 12:02. We have another meeting that should have started at 12, and we don't seem to be any closer to a decision right now. And I'm wondering how we move this forward, because we don't have a motion. I think we're all a little boggled. What is the best way? Do we drop this and bring it back to another agenda next week with additional information, if any, that is becomes available? How do we go here? Director Tice.
Defer to board this afternoon.
That is a possibility. Director Toth.
The question is, deferring this just to the next meeting isn't going to solve any of our problems. It's not going to answer any of our questions. I think, it sounds like we're split on this and how we should proceed. And there is more information that, in hearing Director Beamish and my comments and Director Ties, and Director Hiltz, it sounds like there is more information that we need. I don't know what effect that might have on the Strategic Mechanicals bid, whether that's negotiable, whether we have to retender option 1, whether we tender option 2, whether we can negotiate with Strategic Mechanical for option 2. But I don't think we're ready to make a decision on this today, one way or another.
Thank you. GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just offer, if it's helpful to the committee, that staff managed to cut this to a 5-page report. There's an awful lot of work under the hood here. No, we can't negotiate with the bidder. We put out a particular scope of work. We can modify it very slightly, but the scope of change that's implied in the other options here are different projects, and so we have worked with our purchasing professionals to fully exhaust the ability to reconfigure the project in such a way to control costs and it came up to, I won't say entirely a dead end, but we weren't able to come up with any material change. And we were able to confirm that if we are looking at one of the other options, we must retender. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Okay, so a couple things. I just asked what the cost of steel has gone up since February, 450% and still climbing. And then what I heard from the board here is that they'd like to hear from the engineer who gave us the initial quote or helped us put together an initial quote, what the change is that impacted this cost. And I'm wondering if we referred this to this afternoon. I mean, it's short notice, but I know staff want to get this in place so that it could be done during the downtime this summer. Would it be possible to have that engineer join us at our meeting this afternoon so that we could ask the engineer about the differences? Because obviously they've seen this information as well. Or I believe they would. I believe they would have if we've asked them for that. Not necessarily.
I can assure you they have seen the options and analysis here. If the board wishes to have the engineer attend, staff can see if that's possible.
I think that might fit your timeline for the work that you're looking at doing, rather than deferring this, you know, another meeting down the road. At least we would maybe have some more information today, which would allow us to make a decision.
Yeah, I would be happy to defer this to the board meeting this afternoon, as we have other pressures right now.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, that's seconded. Thank you very much. I'm going to call the question on that. All in favor? Any opposed? Director Toth? Okay. Did you want that recorded?
That's not necessary, no.
Yeah. All right. This is a really difficult one because I've got to say, just according to my rough math, you know, we're $700,000. That's 3.5% tax increase if we were to, you know, collect it the same year, just for one swimming pool, and that really is a lot of money, and it's pretty daunting. Director Seegers, your hand is still up. Are you okay? That takes us to the last item on our agenda, which is the PMAC minutes. Is there anything arising from the PMAC minutes that we need to deal with? I see.
There are based on staff assessments. There's no need. I think option 4, recommendation 4, the board decided to make a different option there, and I think recommendation 5, I think is is also taken care of.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Then in that case, I would look for a motion to adjourn and ask if there are any questions. Okay, motion to adjourn, all in favor? Okay, and are there any questions from the gallery? I'm not seeing anything at present. Good. IT says none. So thank you very much. We are adjourned, and we'll see you at the next meeting.